For those of us who've joined us in Napa before, you know the Beta SMB Institute Leaders Forum is special. It's a special location, a special venue, and best of all, special people. We pride ourselves on curating an A-list of attendees, the best and brightest leaders of our $500 billion plus business to small business marketplace. And every day we are adding speakers, workshops, and special events to this intimate forum, all of it highlighting the shared challenges and opportunities in a setting that drives casual and candid exchange. Join us at the 2022 Beta SMB Institute Leaders Forum, May 11th and 12th in Napa, California. Tickets are on sale now at betasmbi.com/leadersforum22. Hi, everybody. Dave Walker here. And for our second session of Forward 22, we're doing the bookend of what we did in session one, which was all about the opportunities in Beta SMB that we anticipate over the course of the next year, 2 years. Now we're going to talk about the challenges. But I think we're going to talk about the challenges in the context of actually successfully realizing the opportunities. I think that, what we talked a little about in the opportunity session was the last 2 years has been a slog of facing challenge after challenge after challenge. And I don't think any of us want to revisit that or be reminded of the fact that those challenges continue. But I do think what is very clear is that, and becoming clear every day, I think, is the opportunities that exist in our market space, in the business to small business space, are really legion and have so many different dimensions. But like any great opportunity in business, to really fulfill the opportunity, you have to overcome some challenges. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about those challenges in the context of the opportunities they represent. I have a fantastic panel, as I did in session one. It's made up of folks who've been around the Institute for quite some time and are familiar voices in our community, and thrilled to have them. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite people in the space of influencers, and that is Melinda Emerson, the small biz lady. Melinda, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. It's been a whirlwind last 24 months for small businesses. So I'm definitely excited to be here to contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, and give us a quick, if you would, a thumbnail bio of yourself for those fools out there who don't know who you really actually are. Just give us a quick intro.
Sure. Well, as Dave said, my name is Melinda Emerson, but my nickname is the Small Biz Lady. I'm regarded as America's #1 small business expert, and my Small Biz Lady brand reaches roughly 3 million entrepreneurs each week online. I'm also the best-selling author of Become Your Own Boss in 12 Months, which I'm proud to say is a startup business book that has been in print over 11 years with Simon & Schuster. So really excited to be here. And, one of the things that I'm super excited about in my business is the online school that we started in the middle of the pandemic called Small Biz Lady University. And we started it because of all of the reasons why small businesses went flames, during the pandemic. So we have courses on how to sell and market online, ultimate guide to email marketing, and social media selling. And so that's what I'm teaching these days, teaching people how to sell online.
Very cool. Someone who's a little familiar with selling online, Mr. Kush Srivastava. Kush, welcome.
Thank you for hosting us again, Dave, and appreciate you putting me on such an amazing panel. Very nice to meet you all as well. I'm Kush, started my career at Google, about 8 years there in product management and product marketing. Had the opportunity to work on Google Ads, which a lot of small business use. Post that, I started a startup that was acquired by Pinterest. Another company after that had another acquisition with a legal tech provider. Spent 4 years at Verizon, most recently as managing director, working on small business products, and recently left to join a crypto startups, figuring out what cryptocurrencies and this rabbit hole is. So I'm very excited to talk about that as well. I'm a fellow at the Stanford Law School researching smart contracts, small business policies, and a few other stuff. Very excited to be here.
I'm already deeply humbled. You guys are already out of my league. Somebody who also has an amazing background. Brett Tolbert from Comcast Business. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. yeah, I'm very humbled to go after both Melinda and Kush and their experience. But hi, Brett Tolbert. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Comcast Business. We provide connectivity uh, and telecom services to small businesses, whether you're starting in your home, all the way up to businesses, Fortune 50 businesses, and we're expanding overseas. And so, I've been, whether with Comcast or other telecoms, I've been in the small business space for about 10 years, providing connectivity solutions. And so, very, very excited to be on the panel. I'm actually probably going to learn a ton more than what I'm going to give. And so I can't wait to get started.
No, I think you'll give plenty. And lastly, someone I consider to be a rising star in the business of small business, in the community of small business, and that's Derek Peoples, who's the executive director of the American Independent Business Alliance, or AMIBA. Welcome, Derek.
Hello, Dave. Thanks for having me on again. It's great to be with this panel. My name is Derek Peebles. I'm located in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm the executive director of the American Independent Business Alliance. This group was formed about 20 years ago to build a movement that really supports the development of locally owned independent businesses. So over the past 20 years, we've been able to help form or grow more than 60 independent business alliances across the country. And these alliances count for over about 50,000 local independent businesses that are within our network, and we're all united in support of protecting local economies. So terms like buy local and local first, we've played a key role in helping those concepts and that language really become prevalent across the United States, and more so now over the past 2.5 years.
Awesome. And we all have to be kind to Derek because he is a Cincinnati Bengals fan. So be good to my man here. So let's start out with just the same question that we asked the group, talking about opportunities in the B2SMB space. And that's really, from where you sit, how bullish are you on the future of small businesses over the next year and a half as they quote recover from this pandemic? Melinda, starting with you.
Well, I think, there's a lot of small businesses out here that still have a long way to go. And that has a lot to do with the fact that the way the PPP loan stuff was rolled out and then the EIDL loan stuff was really, it did a disservice to the smallest, most challenged businesses in the first place. It's basically, if you didn't have any employees, if you didn't use a payroll service, you couldn't qualify for any of that stuff. And then the EIDL loan, people were not able to get those because of credit scoring. And it's like, oh yeah, well, in the middle of the pandemic, is everybody's credit supposed to still be perfectly, particularly a small business who had no business at all. So it was just really unfortunate how those government programs that were set up to help small businesses really helped very few. I think one of the things that was a saving grace, though, were all of the corporations that rolled in and said, okay, we're going to do grants. But I think even how some of that rolled out, I think corporations were frantic and just kind of gave money to anybody that looked like they could remotely reach Black and brown people. And so now what we've seen the results of that is, I don't know how much of that money really got deployed in a most effective way. But I think there's a lot of lessons learned out here. I think everybody will, there's that book, Thinking Fast and Slow, right? I think that people are going to utilize more of that going forward and look for strategic partners versus any partner. And so I'm excited about the fact that it looks like people are going to continue and do additional support services for small businesses. I'm glad that all of those are not necessarily just training. I think sometimes we get stuck in the training and mentorship bucket when what small business owners really need is access to capital and access to contracts. It's not saying that mentoring and training isn't needed too, but at the end of the day, contracts will solve a whole lot of problems. And so I think that as organizations continue to think about how they can help, I think that we've got to get beyond supplier diversity and talk about supplier development. And maybe you develop companies in very specific areas of need within the company. But I think that when we look at, for example, African-American women business owners, 96% of African-American women business owners in the United States are solopreneurs. 96%. So how are you serving those guys? Right. And so you have to think of the smallest of these. I think everyone wants to chase the $1 million to $10 million small business. Well, great. There's a whole lot of people chasing that group of people. But if you can figure out how do we lift the smallest businesses who have just been disenfranchised in corporate America, and they're not interested in being in corporate America anymore, but they're starting businesses and they need help. And I think that we need to think about that, strategically going forward, just as an industry and with the clients I'm working with, that's what I'm advising them.
Awesome. Kush, how about from your perspective? You've been around the small business space for a long, long time. How bullish are you on the future?
Yeah, that's a great way of phrasing the question, Dave. When I start thinking about a small business, typically when you leave a large company like I was at and come outside, you start thinking about challenges. Like, what are the challenges today, not opportunities? There are supply chain challenges, there are labor shortages, there are management of remote work, there are pandemic concerns, the security, adequate funding, improving your content marketing game, developing IT solutions, tax filing, legal requirement, everything that you can think of piles up on a small business. It's not easy. But if you start thinking and breaking through the clutter, there hasn't been a better time to start a small business than it is today. There are, in terms of opportunities, there are plenty. There is rise in, like Melinda, you pointed out very well, there's a lot of people who just don't want to join the corporate American workforce. They want to have a sustainable, good living and live life at their own terms. So the opportunities that they're seeking can be as diverse as like doing some freelance work to being an influencer and so on and so forth. In terms of opportunities, there are quite a few. I feel that I feel that, like, as small businesses are getting out of the pandemic, they're gaining significant amount of emotional intelligence, empathy, and understanding of how the world moves around them. And there's so many problems that need to be solved that they will find their own niche. I'm not going to go into like distinct areas, but from an opportunity perspective, I feel this is no better time to start a business than it is today.
That's a great way of putting it, Kush. Derek, how about you? And obviously you're not selling to small business. You're representing them. You're gathering them. You're mustering them as a force. How bullish are you on what small businesses can do on their own behalf over the course of the next few years?
Sure. So yes, I mean, we're in the business of advocating for small businesses all over the nation. And I think that, we saw some challenges and some successes in the PPP rollout. And I think that, one of the issues to focus on that was mentioned earlier was really the deployment of those funds. And so I think if that support is able to get directly to the business owner without jumping through a whole lot of, hula hoops, I think that small businesses will thrive in the future. What we learned throughout the pandemic and the PPP rollout is that small businesses with 20 employees or less tended to do better with receiving funds out of PPP in geographic areas where community banks and local banks were more prevalent. The smaller businesses under 20 employees that were located in major metropolitan areas had less success with getting PPP funds. And so I think that over the past year, we really kind of started to see that we needed to deploy those funds in a different way to reach those businesses. And when you look at Black and brown businesses, they did a lot worse because, for the most part, they were underbanked. But we did see over $400 billion out of the America Rescue Plan Act that actually went to small businesses. The businesses that were more challenged were the ones that were unable to switch to online services and to be able to shift kind of in that digital way. And so I think if more support, we also campaign to reform the SBA to really look at these challenges of the smaller businesses of 20 employees and less, these solopreneurs, because we feel like if the support for small businesses continue in the way that it did during the PPP rollout, once those changes were made, we feel that small businesses will be able to thrive for the foreseeable future. Now, you also have to regulate monopolies in that way as well, because our networks are primarily comprised of retailers. And so we do see a large challenge in the retail space, but we also see some opportunities as well. For instance, I think the country saw a huge shift in the influx of garden retail consumers. So in recent years, we promote the local multiplier effect, which is consumers really getting into this awareness that their dollar actually has power, and getting them to really understand their purchasing power. And one thing that we've learned throughout the pandemic is that we are now starting to see a new green consumer. And so shoppers worldwide in the green space are starting to really understand that their purchasing power can make change happen. And so consumers are calling for businesses across all industries to put their values on display and rewarding those who align with their values, and they're excluding the ones that don't. And so we now have a hyper awareness around, the impact of local businesses to our national economy. And we think that that's only going to get stronger.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I hope it gets stronger. Brett, you're in the business of basically helping small business make those evolutionary, if not revolutionary, steps into digital, into technology, into digital. Talk to me about how bullish you are on that quote digital transformation that's been so written about over the course of the last years. Is it real? Number one. Number two, does it extend? Does it make you a little more optimistic about, frankly, the success that small businesses are going to have in the future?
Yeah, and I'm probably going to take a slightly different slant on the question. I'm going to answer it, but we do well over 500,000 transactions with small business every year. So we see some of these macro trends. One of the things that kind of Melinda, Kush, and Garrett talked about is about funds, right? One of the things that we're seeing is that the small business growth isn't quite what it was in the past. Meaning, a certain percentage of our business is about our current customer opening up a second location, right? New businesses, applications that become a home-based business, and then they transfer to become a premise-based business. We've seen both of those start to slow down. And so what we see is that one is the kind of the expansion and the growth in the small business space for the ones that do want to grow. Because there's a large portion of the small business space that they've been established since 1975 and they're kind of going along and they're fine. But the ones that want to grow are running into liquidity issues. And so because inflation's gone up, they don't have sophisticated kind of way that they procure goods. They can't lock in prices. They're having to take out more loans. All of those things take up capital and liquidity that they could go into growth, right? And so that is an issue. So when you talk about are they utilizing kind of the new kind of digital technologies that are available to them, that takes cash and time, and they happen to have less cash than they did in the past to be able to kind of go apply it. So you have this divide between small business and mid-market starting to grow. Mid-market, much more sophistication in their purchasing, and they can they can manage their cash better, and they've actually been very, very good about moving into the new kind of digital space and taking advantage of it, whereas the small businesses don't have the cash to do it. Now, I think what Melinda talked about earlier about her setting up a kind of a school to help with the marketing is when you have a lot of these new businesses that are coming, or they're now starting these new applications, they're becoming home-based businesses, and it's 100% digital marketing. But the thing is, if you don't know digital marketing, it can be very confusing. You can spend a lot of money and get nothing for it. If you open up a storefront, you get a sign, you get foot traffic. but there is a huge lack of education and knowledge about how to utilize the digital space. And we've talked about this. This is even what, 4 years ago, Dave, we were talking about how, Google is trying to get all the small business just to kind of put their information up on Google so they can be found by consumers. That's still a problem today. A lot of them still don't do that. That's 101. And so I think what Melinda's, kind of talking about what she's going after is huge. If you wanted to get the next generation of the kind of these small sole proprietors to kind of continue to grow, they have to master the digital space.
You took that answer in a great direction, and I appreciate it. Better framed than the way I asked it. Let's talk about the specific categories of small business or stages of small business that you think are most at risk, or we're going to face the greatest challenges over the course of the next couple of years. I mean, certainly looking backwards, we know that restaurants, for instance, are under severe stress. And I anticipate that restaurants will continue to be under stress. But are there characteristics, Melinda, or profile attributes of small businesses that are going to frankly need the most help as we move forward? And everybody think about that question as I kind of move back around the horn again, starting with you, Melinda.
I definitely think that retailers, I mean, certainly restaurants, but I think all the personal care folks, the hair salons, the nail salons, like those guys are all still struggling. So I don't think it's just isolated to restaurants, but I also think professional service businesses and product-based business are too. As Brett said, if you do not know how to sell online, if you don't understand SEO, content, how to buy ads, which platform you should be spending time on. I mean, marketing has become really, really complicated. So now we go from where 50% of small business owners didn't even have websites. This was prior, to the pandemic. So then those people, and then let's say you're a longtime retailer, you probably didn't have an email list of customers that you could contact and tell them how you're doing business now. I mean, there were all these things that the pandemic sort of like unearthed for people in terms of the things that they didn't know and what was keeping them, a website that mobile optimized, that downloads quickly, there's just click the call buttons. There's all this kind of stuff that if you've been in business since 1980, you don't know, right? Unless you have, one of your children that now work for you, that you'd be like, figure this out, right? Like they're good at making their widget. Some of them are not so good at running a business. And I think, I always talk about it like this. The average entrepreneur, the average small business owner has 4 employees and is 49 years old. That's who the average small business owner is in America. And they frankly tend to be male more so than female. And so you think about somebody 49 years old. When's the last time they've been in a classroom? When's the last time they, learned how to, develop their own Facebook ads? Are you kidding me? I mean, like there was a huge learning curve. And I think that it doesn't matter what kind of business you have, if you don't know basic online selling strategies, it doesn't matter this year, 3 years from now, you're going to be in trouble. And so I think that that's where we've got to go with really helping people with their digital marketing education, and then access to opportunities, and then access to capital. I mean, Brett hit it right on the nose. Liquidity is the issue. If you don't have a line of credit, depending on how you get paid by your customers, I mean, I do business with a lot of Fortune 1000 companies. And I hate to say this, but the bigger the company, the slower they pay, right? So when you're waiting on money 60 days, 90 days, and you've got payroll, you've got to order the supplies so that you can service that customer, you're in trouble. And, banks and CDFIs and all these guys, they're not that keen on lending money to small businesses. So it's really, really hard to get the resources you need to service your customers, let alone grow. And so I think it's a universal problem. I can't even say it's one group of entrepreneurs. I think all entrepreneurs, unless they have sort of like gotten over the $1 million mark and they have more long-term contracts and they can use that to leverage to get capital, I think they're struggling. But I know people who've been in business who have $5 and $10 million businesses that cannot borrow money. And they can't borrow money because if they bootstrap their business, they've got two late mortgage payments on their credit score. So they can't get approved for a loan with a cash flow positive $5 million business. So we've got to look at some alternative lending models that are character-based as opposed to credit-based, so that we can help some of these deserving businesses that have basically built their businesses bootstrapped with their credit cards. And of course, they're over leveraged because they've used every personal asset that they have to build their baby, to build their business. So I think we really, as an industry, need to really advocate for changes to the SBA, for changes to CDFIs, so that we can really start getting capital in the hands of people that need it the most.
So Kush, from your perspective, as somebody who's developed a lot of tools over the years that small businesses use, what are some of the, what are some of the businesses you think that are going to be most challenged?
Yeah, I like to think of this problem in two dimensions. The first on, say, like you're plotting an X and Y axis. On the X graph, let's call it, is access to lending. So the closer you are and it goes from like low to high. So the closer you are, the lower the problems compound. Like money can solve, like the CEO of Google, Eric Smith, used to say, revenue solves all known problem to mankind. Particularly if you don't have revenue, it's going to be hard. And on the Y-axis or on the X-axis, I look at what's the learning curve of the customer. So when you plot learning curve of the small business owner against the axis of capital, when you're closer to X0, Y0 kind of a grid, if I'm like trying to visualize that with my hands, this and this is the small quadrant, and here is where the successful businesses are, I think those businesses struggle the most. What are the fundamental characteristics that that define those? There are three things that stood out for me when I analyzed these businesses. The first is most of these businesses are single founders. Starting a company is a very, very lonely journey. I know many people have support of good families and friends, but when you start a business, it becomes very, very lonely. Your business becomes your baby. You're thinking about it 24/7. It puts a strain on your personal relationship and 20 other things that comes with it. Compounded by the fact that you're not growing it, you're probably not cash flow positive. You're waiting for invoices to get paid and things like that. So that's the first sort of emotional characteristic that you have to look at. Other thing that you need to look at is like how, to Melinda's point and to Brett's, like what's the learning curve of these small businesses, where they fall under this like sort of XY dimension. Are they young and they just don't know how to do marketing or manage payroll, manage finances, or are they mature? They have been doing it for in your case, Melinda, 49-year-old predominantly male small business owner who probably hasn't updated himself to the realities of how to market and run a business in 2022. And I think once you start like breaking these cohort down and trying to like, whenever you meet a small business, I try to place them in some of these dimensions and say like, the problem to be solved here is either financing, education, or something else. And that helps me like build products which are catering to the small businesses a little bit better in the moment that really, really matters by isolating the problems. But it also helps the small business, if you apply the same framework, as a small business owner, it helps me understand where I am at, what are my problems, and how I'm going to solve for them. And I think you guys are absolutely right that large businesses, and I was at Verizon for a number of years and Google as well, small business lending is an unsolved problem, and I don't think it's going to get solved anytime soon. The risk model, the underwriting is very, very difficult for a large company to build around it. While I can appreciate the notion of character-based lending, it's just not a very, very scalable business model that a large company can get behind. So I think this problem is going to remain unsolved for a little bit. But I'm really hoping that as more data gets available about small businesses, I've seen like SaaS companies now find it easier to raise money where based on the future revenue, they're able to get business loans because their revenue is a little bit more predictable. So I think instead of like clubbing the problem at a complex high level that small businesses don't have access to capital, let's break it down and start thinking about what kind of small businesses have the hardest hit when it comes to access to capital. You can start thinking about in terms of this cohort, the X and Y axis that are described, and then like layer on things. Are these more people of color? Are these people in certain geos? Are the people from a certain certain socioeconomic class that are not benefiting? And then once you start solving one problem and in bite-sized pieces, I think we'll solve it much faster than trying to compound and be generic about it and say that small businesses don't have access to capital. That worries me a little bit when I think about those very macroeconomic trends. But I do think the solution lies in like breaking down the problem in bite-sized pieces and then going about it.
Derek, to you, and feel free to cut a new trail here as in the conversation, because this has been very, very rich so far. What categories or what segments of small business do you foresee as being most challenged over the course of the next couple of years?
Well, I think if nothing is done from the perspective that everybody has spoken about with this access to capital, you have businesses, small businesses in all industries suffer. And I think it stifles innovation. But with that, you know, we've seen that the pandemic has also accelerated interest in small scale manufacturing businesses. So when you think about the pandemic during the lockdown, you had strong supply chain breakdowns, but those actually created new opportunities for small scale manufacturers. So if you think, for instance, of all of the distilleries that pivoted to produce hand sanitizer, and all of the tailors and theater costume shops that pivoted to making face masks. You know, this really caught the attention of civic leaders and economic development organizations across the country that are interested in making supply chains more resilient to interruption by sourcing local entrepreneurs and local talent. And so an example of that, you've seen some interest, for instance, in communities all over that see small scale manufacturing as a key component of community economic development. And it's drawn inspiration from a number of examples of successful like food production hubs, specialized co-working spaces, but also that touches into what I've heard. It also offers entrepreneurial training programs, and that's happened over the past decade or two. So for instance, there's a company in San Francisco, La Cocina. It's a commercial kitchen that offers production space to low-income food entrepreneurs with industry-specific technical and financial assistance. And they're one of the pioneers in this space of figuring out how to form cooperatives as a way to get access to capital to underrepresented entrepreneurs. And so we're starting to see that around the country as well, but more specifically in the small scale manufacturing space.
That's terrific.
I know that doesn't maybe answer your question, but it
no, I think it does. I mean, I think that it's the money, stupid, right? I mean, it's the money that small businesses need more than anything else. What you're describing, Derek, is a really interesting workaround. I think Kush is right. I think that wholesale reinvention of the business lending process for small businesses is not in the immediate future. Unfortunately, it's too many well-established institutions that really don't want to change for a variety of reasons. The challenge is, okay, we still need to, we who are supposedly smart people need to figure out those workarounds. And that's a great one that you just described, Derek. Brett,
I think another one, just real quick, another
Sure.
workaround that we're starting to hear a lot of buzz around and that we're advocating for is starting to really kind of look at small businesses, BIPOC owned businesses as really the fabric to the future of American life. And so one of the things that we're seeing, because we know that there's capital issues and things like that, is to start looking at really kind of how funds from the government, and we've talked about this in the Reform the SBA campaign that we're doing, really kind of looking at funds to be one way to be offered through nonprofits as a way or to have these funds kind of issued as grants to small businesses instead of getting them into loans where, you know, it could be kind of troublesome for them as far as growth. So that's one way of that we're looking into of getting access to capital. And the government's kind of looking at that as well, instead of always using banks and financial institutions as the intermediaries.
I also happen to be aware that there is the Association for Enterprise Opportunity is currently pilot testing two brand new access to capital models that do not necessarily involve credit scoring. And there is other research that SOCAP is doing, which is short for social capital. And there's an organization out of California called Mission Driven Finance that does up to $500,000 loans and does not utilize credit score to do so. So there are models that people are testing, and it's becoming more and more prevalent that people are talking about these models because they realize that the banks and CDFIs, I mean, even the nonprofits that service small business owners, many of them are not lending very much capital. You know, so I think that, you know, and there's give and take on both sides. Obviously, the statistics of how many small businesses go under by year 5 is real, right? You know, so I get it. But at the same time, you know, we got to play to win, right? You got to bet on somebody. And so I want to encourage organizations to even look in, you know, their suppliers that they work with. You know, could they pay them a quarter ahead on a contract, like just to help them from a cash flow standpoint, stay in business so that they can provide the work versus making a large. I mean, I've been exposed to some corporations that their standard practice is net 60, and then they have a factoring company within their own organization contact you and say, hey, if you give us, you know, an offer 2 to 3, 4% off this invoice, we'll put it in your account tomorrow. So in a desperate small business, kind of almost can't say no to something like that. Yet here is a corporation taking a haircut on somebody's profit margin after they've already done the work, after they've already submitted their invoice.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Incredibly unfair, right?
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
You got corporations doing stuff like that to small businesses. I've actually experienced that in my own company. So I just think that there's lots of different models out here. And if all of the corporations that want to sell things to small business owners started treating their small business vendors better, that would go a long way with changing the industry by those businesses' practices, right? You know, because it seems like it's a monkey see, monkey do thing kind of out here in terms of business, and people want to outdo each other looking like they're doing something for small business. Well, how about you pay your small business vendors that you have in a reasonable amount of time without beating them up to get paid?
Hear, hear. Brett, to you, I want to open up a kind of a new avenue of conversation around the new businesses that have been started over the course of the last year. I don't know if you guys saw or not, but the SBA actually revised its estimate of total number of small businesses started in 2021 from 4.5 million now up to 6.5 million. So that's an even bigger number. I thought 4.5 million was huge, but 6.5 million is really huge. Are there, with all these new small businesses coming into play, are there specific challenges that you think they are going to face, or that are any different than the challenges that any small business faces when it starts up? And how do you anticipate the community of those of us who sell to those small businesses are going to really provide the greatest amount of assistance to that group?
Yeah, one of the things I want to talk about, just the first thing, but yes, there have been more business applications. However, just to let everyone know what we see in the data, and it's, you know, you can see this in the census data, that's actually dropped off pretty dramatically starting in June of last year. So it was crested, but it's amazing how quickly it's kind of fallen off. So it's still higher than historicals, but it's not as prevalent as it was. One of the things, I think, honestly, one of the biggest issues is that, you know, as I mentioned before, we have, you know, you see this big all these new applications. However, for our business, which does provide connectivity to small business, we haven't seen the same growth in the new businesses actually being able to establish themselves. And so I think before you can I think honestly, it comes back to, I don't want to reiterate what we already talked about. If you start a business, if you can't find customers, right? If you can't have a successful model, then you're just not going to grow and be a viable business. And so I think just some of, some of these building blocks of, I have a product that people want and it's differentiated, because while we talk about technology as being a savior, it's also the other side of the coin is that it actually makes it more competitive. So do you actually have something that is differentiated? Because we also see general retail still doing very, very poorly. And the second, can I get customers? Do I have a model that can keep coming them back to us? I think those are the things that small businesses are having to kind of struggle with today. I know, as I mentioned before, technology is great, but there are certain things. There's now a new middleman. If you open up a restaurant, you're going to be using Grubhub, but that's 20% off of your profit margin by using it. It's not that profitable. On top of that, you're not managing your expenses that much. And so I think while technology is great, I think it's actually one of the bigger hurdles for small businesses. They're competing against other businesses that are larger and more sophisticated of how to kind of do marketing and keep customers. And then you have a whole slew of new type of solutions, which do help small businesses, but also, again, costs money and time that, again, cuts into their cash and be able to go expand and do more things. And so I think those are some of the new things that, while people are trying to help small businesses, sometimes they're helping themselves more so than their customers.
I sometimes have been very presumptuous in assuming that all small businesses want to grow, and frankly, not really admitting that no, there's a tremendous amount of businesses out there, small businesses out there, who are not at all interested in growth. What they're really interested in is kind of a healthy sustainability. So I'd like to kind of unpack that a little bit, as we oftentimes think in terms of the challenges that small business are really grounded in growth and adding, more revenue, more employees, more outlets, et cetera. Are we neglecting addressing the challenge of those businesses who want to just simply be sustainable? And if so, what are some of the things that are the opportunities to really, frankly, pay more attention to those businesses that really are looking for just simply a sustainable model, sustainable way of doing business? Kush, I'll start with you and then kind of move it around.
Yeah. By the way, great question, Dave. I really appreciate thinking about just the way you described it. Not everyone will want to grow, and it can be rather presumptuous of when we as individuals who are in the small business community tend to think that let's build a tool that will take you to the next level, or let's provide a service that will take you to the next level. Three things. First, I think COVID opened the eyes of many individuals in many ways to think about what's important in life. And that's a good thing. That's sort of a blessing in disguise that a lot of us were able to reflect and go back to things that really make us human. So I think a lot of small businesses went through the same exercise and understood what drives them in life, not drives them in terms of business success. We as the community that empowers a lot of these small business also need to be cognizant about that. The second thing that I've often noticed now, we call it the Great Migration, or the workflows not going back to corporate America, or just trying to do their own thing, means that we need to think through more sustainable economic opportunities for a lot of individuals that in the classic sense are not small businesses. They can be, I think, Melinda, you pointed that out, they can be solopreneurs or just single founder companies, maybe not even have an LLC or not even have any kind of a payroll, but in itself, they are a small business. They are delivering services in different ways. And their ambition is not to earn millions and millions of dollars. Their ambitions are to earn a sustainable, sometimes nomad, sometimes like more homesteading kind of a lifestyle, and we need to figure out a way to sustain them. And the third is when you start gazing into the future and start thinking about where we as a society are going with a lot of technology and a lot of automation and a lot of firepower that large companies are going to put into advance the society, the key factor to think through is going to be the parameters that you defined as success until now are not going to be the same. They're going to look a little bit different, and we need to develop a sense of empathy towards that. So while I don't have a very good answer for you on what kind of solutions we should be building for such businesses, it's very thought-provoking, and I assure you that I'm going to pay more attention and think about it and get back to you.
Well, and I appreciate that. Derek, I guess I'll move the question to you. As an advocate for small businesses, do you observe that, there are many of your members who are not necessarily interested in a high rate of growth, but they're really interested more in the health of their business and making it more sustainable? Do those issues come up? Do those challenges come up? What are some of the things that you maybe are observing?
Yes, and I think that directly links to what we saw, that, local businesses that had a tough run during the pandemic were the ones that were not able to shift to technology platforms. That was very prevalent across the businesses within our networks, which are primarily Main Street level businesses. But to answer your question, historically, most of the businesses in our network have always have valued sustainability more than growth, because they understand that their business, their Main Street business, has a role in sustaining the community character of the community in which they do business. So we have seen a hyper awareness of these Main Street businesses that are looking to hire local. Restaurants who were able to hire within a 5-mile radius had better success. So, those are really kind of what we've seen. But I mean, I think the real opportunity is that we've been locked up for 2.5 years. And so I believe that we're really going to start seeing a shift of people that are looking to be more outdoors. But they now also recognize their own purchasing power and the value and the power of their own dollar. So consumers, really have a lot to say whether or not a local business grows or not, or whether it maintains the community character. And during the pandemic, many of these type of consumers did not have access to their local businesses, and they realized that it contributed to their community fabric and their lifestyle. So, you think of that local bookstore that I believe really needs to transition and stay relevant as far as technology is concerned. But we're also going back to the hyper awareness of the impact that our local business has and the lifestyle that it provides us.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Brett, my question to you is, as someone who has obviously hundreds of thousands of small business customers, what kind of feedback loops are you creating from your small business customers, and what kind of challenges are they kind of laying at your doorstep and saying, this is where we really need you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we, every employee calls 2 customers a month who's filled out an NPS survey. And so we actually make, we take a lot of pride in making sure that we do talk with our customers. We're interacting with them. Ironically, the funny thing is that when we talk with them, the things that come up, after we talk about, the technology solutions, how our service was and what we can do to be better, a lot of the conversations go towards government overstepping. And it comes back to, one of the things that we can't help them with, but I'm just letting you know what they say to us. They're going, the government is kind of putting these new rules on us. We have, from a state perspective, we're doing this, we're being told to do this, and they're being kind of whiplash back and forth. And so they just talk about this without us even bringing it up. And I think what it comes down to is also we see in our business is that they want flexibility, right? The thing is they want the flexibility to run the business in a way that meets them and their needs. They want terms. They want flexible terms. Melinda was talking about accounts payable, right? But they want that type of flexibility in their business to do business the way that matters to them. And so whether you're a business that's trying to grow or you're a business that's been around since 1975, you're a car mechanic on the corner, they just want the kind of the flexibility in a streamlined way to kind of run their business. And the less obstacles you can get in their path, they'll take it.
Dr. Emerson, my question for you is the patient, the small business, in your experience, because you spend so much time teaching small businesses, are they good at articulating the challenges that they are facing? And by that, I mean, do they really have a clear sense of what the challenge is, or do they know how to communicate it, or do they communicate it honestly? For instance, many people who are on the front lines of selling to small businesses will hear the objection that, I just really don't have time for this product or this tool. And underlying that is really, I don't trust either myself or you that this tool is actually going to work for me. And really unpacking that and understanding that what's the real challenge or the real question that you're asking, just as an illustration. Do you find that small businesses struggle to articulate what their challenges are?
I think they did. I don't think since the pandemic they do anymore. I think people are real clear about what the challenges are or what the challenges have been trying to stay in business. I do think that when it comes to someone trying to solicit them or sell something to them, when they say they don't have time, part of it is they don't have time to stop and learn something else because they're so busy trying to run their business day to day. Mm-hmm. Even if they are more savvy than the average Bear small business owner, and they kind of, they do social media, they understand, some of the stuff going on with their website, learning another brand new piece of software that wasn't designed well, that isn't terribly user friendly, nobody's got time for that. And so I think that that's really what it comes down to when they're saying, I don't have time. It is, dude, I don't have time to learn something else. If this thing can't do it for me, if it's not add water and mix, I don't have any more bandwidth to learn something else. And that's really what they mean.
Well, I want to, as my last question, I kind of want to go around the group here and ask, I guess, the bookend to the first question, which is, are you bullish on our business to small business brand enterprise industry? Are you bullish on our ability, including advocates, including influencers, to help small businesses solve for the challenges that they face? And if you're not bullish, which is perfectly fair to say that you're not, what do you think are the solutions to really help fix that? So I'll start Brett with you.
Am I bullish? I would probably err on the side of no, because there isn't an industry out there that I know who can make more time in the day, right? And so that is, I think Melinda hit it right. We hear it all the time when we're talking to people. They're going, I just want it to work. I just don't have time to deal with the technology. That's why we build a lot of security stuff built into our products, because we know they'll never take the time to go learn it, and they need it. And so that's why I'm a little bit on the bear side of that. But I think what will be interesting in 5 years, what the new small business looks like. Again, I'm going to keep quoting Melinda all day long now, right? The average, and she's right, average in small business employee is 49 years old, right? That's an average, right? So there's a whole bookend right there. So there's going to be a whole, segment that's going to be kind of retiring. We have a whole new segment coming up. I am very, very bullish on the new segment coming up. They're going to be more tech savvy. They're going to be into understanding technologies. They're going to know how to multitask better. And they're going to understand kind of how to kind of get things done in a more digital world. And so I kind of, I play both sides of it. I'm bearish on kind of the older end. I'm bullish on the younger end who can actually take advantage of kind of what the new world looks like.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Kush, how about you?
I think I'm very bullish. Technology is hitting it's being commoditized. It's no longer a competitive edge. It's almost a least common denominator. It enables people. I understand that there's a dire need to educate small businesses who may not be as familiar with or comfortable with using it to take advantage of it. But I remain bullish that your phones, your basic marketing tools are going to become an extension of you. And broadly speaking, I'm more bullish on this group's ability to make it happen. Like if we will not take responsibility and not believe in like changing the status quo for young and the old, I think we'll fail our mission. So, and I'm very confident rather that we will not let small businesses down in the course of next 2 to 5 to 10 years. And we leverage technology, we leverage education and each other and this community to figure out a better way to reduce the small business mortality rate, which of course has been significantly high since the pandemic.
Derek, how about you?
I'm reluctantly bullish, but you know, I would have to say that we have to embrace technology like we had to embrace industrialization over 100 years ago. And so I think it's inevitable. What I worry about is the more that technology advances, the more racial economic disparity it creates if we don't focus on shifting our financial system to get access to capital to the most underserved.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's I'll leave it there.
And Melinda, finally to you, are you bullish?
I'm not.
Or are
bullish.
you reluctantly bullish? That's a great, by the way, that's a quotable quote.
I was actually going to use the word hopeful. I'm not bullish. I mean, I think bullish is an aggressive term. I feel like the one thing that I'm grateful for out of the pandemic is that it finally really shone a light on small businesses in this country and what the contribution of small businesses and what a world could be like without small businesses. And I think that world scared everybody. And I think that this year, if you look at the statistics of people who did shop small this holiday, who did look to their local businesses and tried to help them through the pandemic, I think that the fact that people are now paying attention to small business, that corporations are investing in grant programs and training programs and mentorship programs for small businesses. My prayer is that it just doesn't stop. What I want is for us not to be the soup du jour, but for people to realize that if small businesses create 60 to 70% of the net jobs in America, that this is a group of people worth investing in for the long haul. Not a quick campaign, but a 10-year, 20-year program that's going to, track some statistics and data to make sure that the stuff you're investing in is actually moving the needle and helping small business owners. And that is my prayer. That is my hope, that, the SBA not turn around and, start servicing another group of people that they prioritize more. I really want the focus to be on solving the biggest problems that small business owners have. And it is clearly access to capital and access to contracts.
And again, a fabulous drop the mic kind of answer there. I think it's interesting from my perspective, having sat through and interviewed now these kind of bookend sessions of one group talking about the opportunities ahead of us, one group really kind of framing out the challenges, and to see how easy it is to have the conversation about opportunities, and how hard it is to have the conversation about challenges. And I think that the challenges, I think all of you guys would agree, because you've pretty much been saying this, is that these are hard. These are hard, and we have not figured these things out yet. And while there are lots and lots of opportunities out there for us to all grow our enterprises, to grow our audiences, to grow our constituents that we serve, to advance any number of things, there's still some big chunky things in this ecosystem that really are mountains to be moved. So I appreciate you guys articulating what many of those mountains are. And I think that hopefully as a collective within the Institute, within our community, we can start figuring out better ways to address the challenges collectively, together, collaboratively. So thanks very much for doing this. Thank you, Brett.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for having me. Always, as I said before from the beginning, I knew I was going to learn a lot more than what I was going to give, and the panel did not disappoint.
I always do. Kush, great to see you. See you in Napa. Always terrific to have you on board.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for hosting me. This has been a fascinating discussion.
Derek, thank you so much for doing this. Greatly appreciated. Sorry about the Bengals.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I second kind of what you said. It's a lot easier to focus on the possibilities than focusing on the deficiencies.
Great way of putting it. And Melinda, the most quotable star of the show today. Thank you for doing this as always.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Dave. You know, I love sitting around and talking with industry folks about how we can solve big problems. Because if we all put our heads together, that's when we'll all win.
And I will drop the mic at that. Thank you so much, guys.